You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Months and weeks of waiting. Election Day finally here. The battle for the White House, who controls Congress, and the fate of a host of pivotal ballot measures comes down to tonight. This has been an election season like no other in our country's history. 80 million Americans cast their ballots before Election Day even got underway in early voting. And now we're waiting for approximately 80 million more people to weigh in at the polls today, assuming this year's turnout matches what we saw back in 2020. Polls in Indiana and Kentucky, those are beginning to close right now. People still in line to vote at this time will be allowed to take as long as they need to get their votes in, but no new voters are allowed to get in line. Between these two states, expected to go to Donald Trump, 19 electoral votes are at stake. The next group of states seeing results come in around 7 p.m. Eastern include South Carolina, Virginia, Vermont, and Georgia. And if you're following the battleground states tonight, polls in North Carolina close at 7:30 Eastern, then Pennsylvania at 8, with some exceptions, and we'll tell you more on that in just a moment. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona by 9 p.m. tonight, and Nevada at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. But the first election votes are in and reported every election year. New Hampshire's Dixville Notch famously holds their small election at midnight and then announces the results immediately. It showed Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump tied with 3 votes each. And the voters showed a microcosm of what's at stake across the country today.
As a leader, I don't respect Trump. I thought that his character is just anathema to what I think a leader should be.
I voted for him because of the policies, and those are the ones that, align with my beliefs.
And here's a live look over the Edensburg Courthouse in the heart of Cambria County, Pennsylvania. We're beginning right at 7 a.m. this morning. Scanners all across the court and in Bedford County went offline. Officials initially called it a software glitch preventing ballots from being scanned. At around noon, Cambria County Commissioner Scott Hunt confirmed that a ballot printing issue led to widespread problems, not the computers. Some precincts placed the ballots into lock boxes to be scanned later or counted by hand. Other voters say they were told to come back later in the day. A court order has extended the polls to stay open in these counties until 10 p.m. tonight to allow all voters to be able to get their votes in. And a live look now over downtown Atlanta, where today Brad Raffensperger, the GA Secretary of State, is blaming Russia for being behind several non-credible bomb threats into 2 polling places that briefly disrupted voting this morning. This comes after last night. A Georgia poll worker was arrested for allegedly threatening poll workers, including himself, in a letter. A bomb threat was included at the end of the letter as well. No workers were harmed. And new surveillance video out now on the device placed on a ballot box in Vancouver, Washington last week that destroyed hundreds of ballots. Authorities are officially calling this a bomb, previously saying it was an arson attempt. The suspect, a white male in his 30s with little to no hair, driving a dark gray car, is believed to be behind 2 other arson attempts against ballot boxes in Portland. And a man is in custody after carrying a torch and flare gun while going through security screening at the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center today. Capitol Police said the man smelled like fuel and the visitor center closed for the day as a result. The officers said they're investigating and will release more information when they can. Vice President Kamala Harris, she's spending the day in Washington, D.C., meeting with staff and participating in some final interviews before heading to her alma mater, Howard University, for election night. The National News Desk's Atra Al-Nashar is in Washington with the latest on the Harris campaign.
The Harris-Walz campaign using every last minute before polls close to mobilize supporters and reach every undecided voter they can. Now, when this campaign started roughly 3 months ago, they saw themselves as the underdog. But in this last week of campaigning, Harris and her surrogates are projecting more confidence that they will win. Still, they are not taking any state or any voter for granted. Staff at campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, spending Tuesday tracking turnout in critical swing states and distributing resources in places where voter attendance isn't yet where they want it to be. After 4 stops in Pennsylvania Monday, Vice President Harris spending Election Day here in Washington. Calling into an Atlanta radio station this morning, she had this message for voters in the swing state of Georgia, where Democrats narrowly won in 2020.
Today is voting day, and people need to get out and be active. The polls close at 7 p.m. And so we want to encourage everyone in Georgia to get out and vote.
Running mate Tim Walz squeezing in one more campaign stop in the capital of battleground Pennsylvania this afternoon.
How about Pennsylvania win this for America?
Walz and his family then heading south to join Harris in Washington, where they hope to make history. Throughout her campaign, Harris hasn't spent much time emphasizing the fact that she could become the first woman president and the first woman of color, but did say this morning.
To go back tonight to Howard University, my beloved alma mater, and be able to hopefully, recognize this day for what it is really, it's full circle for me.
Naturally, there's a lot of excitement built up around tonight, but a campaign source tells me they're fully prepared for the potential that we might not know the final results of some swing states like Pennsylvania until tomorrow or maybe even later. In Washington, I'm Atrell Nishar.
Atra, thank you. The Republican nominees both cast their ballots today. Senator J.D. Vance voting with his wife Usha and his children in Cincinnati. Vance said he feels good about the race, encouraging voters to remember, quote, "We're all on the same team at the end of it." Former President Donald Trump, meantime, casting his vote in Palm Beach, Florida, with his wife Melania. Trump said he's very confident he will win and, quote, "It won't even be close." He was also asked if he'll concede the election if he does lose.
If I lose an election, if it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it.
Trump will be in Florida tonight to watch the results come in. Our Kayla Gaskins joining us now with the latest from West Palm Beach.
Donald Trump's official watch party as the results come in this evening will be here at the Palm Beach Convention Center rather than his home at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris heading into Election Day locked in a virtual dead heat in the polls. The former president casting his ballot just before noon here in Palm Beach in person today, telling reporters he was very honored. The lines were long. His running mate J.D. Vance cast his ballot this morning in Cincinnati, Ohio. Trump asked by reporters today if he expected this to be his last campaign. He replied, "Yes, I think." He was also asked if he had any regrets.
Regrets, you always have regrets. I can't think of any, to be honest, to use her expression. I can't think of any. I ran a great campaign.
In a last-minute get-out-the-vote effort, Trump taking to social media, writing, "I need you to deliver your vote no matter how long it takes. Stay in line." The former president scoring a major last-minute endorsement Monday evening from popular podcast host Joe Rogan. Trump arriving in Florida after an election eve push. The former president making stops in the battlegrounds of North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Donald Trump is expecting to watch the results come in at his home at Mar-a-Lago before ending the night here at the convention center. Reporting from West Palm Beach, Florida, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
You're voting for your future. I mean, this is how you get to have a say in what happens around you. You don't have to sit back and watch the news and be upset by what you see on TV.
It's important to have a say in filling these offices and trying to put forth good candidates that'll make good decisions.
There you have some voter reaction today out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama and Hendersonville, North Carolina. Both, of course, realizing the importance of voting, win or lose. You get to be part of the decision process of who controls the legislation where you live. And speaking of who controls legislation, national correspondent Matt Galka joining us right now with a look at what we can expect in terms of the balance of power on Capitol Hill. We got to know what we can expect all across the country. Matt, what can you tell us? What are you following tonight?
Yeah, good evening, Amir. Obviously, everybody wants to know who's going to win the president of the United States. But if the president doesn't have control, if the party doesn't have control of Congress, it's really hard to get an agenda passed. So obviously, we're looking at the balance of power on Capitol Hill. Let's take a look at the big board here. We'll start with the House. We're tracking a number of House races across the country. Currently, the balance of power, 220-212, Republican-controlled chamber, a very slim margin. Now, 2 races have already been called for uncontested Republicans in Kentucky, but we are tracking many more. Specifically, Let's go to New York. New York was one of the states, obviously a blue state, where a number of races in the New York City suburbs that went to Republicans in some upsets, that ended up shifting the balance of power. So we are going to keep our eyes on a couple of races in New York 17 and 18, New York 19, and Long Island down here in New York 4. Those races we're going to have to keep an eye on. And if we zoom out a little bit more, California, also another blue state where a number of Republican upsets ended up shifting control of the chamber in 2022. We have a couple of races we're going to keep an eye on here in 45, 47, for New York, California 49. Again, California, widely known as a blue state, with Republicans getting some power there for Congress. But it's not just the House, it's also the Senate. Current balance of power here. 51-49, Democrats have controlled that chamber, so we're waiting to see some of those results roll in too. Republicans would only need to flip 2 seats in order to gain control of the chamber, and we are expecting, when polls close in West Virginia, at least 1 flip here. Republican Jim Justice likely to take that seat from retiring Democrat turned independent Joe Manchin. So we are expecting that flip, but a number of races across the country. We've already had one called in Indiana. So we're tracking the balance of power. That was a Republican hold. That's not a Republican flip. So we are tracking a number of races for Congress. Again, the president would like his party or her party to control the chambers in order to enact their agenda. It's going to be tight all across the board. We'll bring you the results as they roll in.
Yeah, as you said, it's going to be tight, and we know you'll stay on top of it. We can't wait to see the results as they roll in. Live from Washington, D.C., Matt Gelka, thank you as always. And on top of all of the candidates who are running, 41 states today will decide on 146 different ballot measures, issues covering future election laws, workers' rights, and minimum wage requirements. Marijuana legalization also on the ballot in 3 states. Measures on immigration, housing costs, and education reform will additionally see voters weigh in. But what is gaining a lot of attention right now are the 9 states with questions on their ballots about abortion. Nevada, Arizona, Montana, Colorado, South Dakota, Nebraska, Missouri, Florida, and Maryland. Some could undo partial bans or restrictions on abortion access if passed. Some would put existing policies into the state constitution. Nebraska has competing ballot measures, one allowing abortion further into pregnancy, the other making the state's current ban after 12 weeks part of the state constitution. So a lot is at stake tonight, and of course we're following it all. We want to remind you here at the National News Desk, we're going to begin our special election night coverage in less than 2 hours at 8 p.m. Eastern going through the night. We've got live reactions from both the Harris and Trump camps, as well as reactions from congressional races around the country as the results come in. So join us both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. And coming up, hurricane season is not over yet. The likelihood a hurricane could hit some Gulf Coast states by the weekend or early next week. Then a major change in Israel's war cabinet right as Israel anticipates an attack from Iran at any moment. And later, how and why certain election races can be called early while other races drag on throughout the night. It's about a lot more than the way votes are counted. We're back in just 90 seconds. Hurricane season doesn't end until the end of the month, and the next hurricane could be upon us within the hour. The National Hurricane Center predicting Tropical Storm Rafael to upgrade into a Category 1 storm tonight as it bears down on the western half of Cuba, passing right over Havana. By tomorrow, Rafael will be in the Gulf Coast, headed towards Louisiana. Now, it's too early to say exactly where it could make landfall in the United States. It could be anywhere from Houston to New Orleans. The National Weather Service predicts Rafael to diminish back into a tropical storm before landfall, possibly on Sunday afternoon or evening. And 33,000 Boeing union workers are headed back to work very soon after 59% of striking workers voted in favor of accepting a deal with Boeing. It comes after 2 offers were voted down. And here's what that new deal looks like. We know that the company has now committed to a 38% pay hike over the next 4 years. Also, a $12,000 signing bonus and 401k contribution improvements, among other benefits. The union president calls it a win, but acknowledges some workers are frustrated a pension wasn't part of the offer.
I feel strongly, and I agree with them, we just couldn't get the pension out of this company.
The union says workers could go back to work as soon as Wednesday, but the company says it could take a couple of weeks to get back to production. Tonight, the FBI issuing a cause for concern. 2 explosions in July, one in Germany and one in the UK, may have been a test run, investigators say, for attacks on the United States. As Christine Frizzell reports, the planning and execution now believed to be carried out by Russia.
As Russia's war in Ukraine carries on, continued support for Ukraine by the United States and other Western countries listed as a top reason for planned retaliation by Russia. European intelligence officials now say Russia was behind 2 explosions at DHL warehouses in July, one in Leipzig, Germany, and one in Birmingham, UK. The details laid out in the Wall Street Journal, part of a covert operation to get incendiary devices on U.S.-bound planes. In this case, electric massagers implanted with a magnesium-based flammable substance sent to the UK from Lithuania appear to have been a test run to figure out how to get such incendiary devices aboard planes bound for North America.
Russia clearly is feeling the pressure of the Ukrainians' continued ability to fight them. This tells us that Russia is really willing to take a risk now. They're willing to take a risk to put themselves in direct conflict with the United States, over the U.S. and Western support to Ukraine.
Polish authorities have arrested 4 people and are looking for 2 more, all with ties to Russia. A spokesman for the Kremlin calls it fake news, but experts say if true, it would signify an escalation in already fraught U.S.-Russia relations.
Let's be clear, any type of event is going to have a chilling effect on transportation, whether air cargo transportation, air freight, or air passenger.
German and British authorities say they're lucky the explosions happened at these cargo hubs instead of on the planes in flight, which may have led to a crash, meaning injuries or even fatalities on the ground. That's not considering the dramatic impact it could have on the economy and the public perception of the safety of flight. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
All right, Christine, thank you. And developing right now a major shakeup in Israel's cabinet today as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has fired Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Netanyahu said in a video message that the trust that existed between the two last year is gone. Netanyahu and Gallant had many open disagreements over how to handle the war as well as hostage negotiations. It's unclear at this time how this could impact Israel's war plans in the near future. But it does come as the IDF has heightened its state of alert ahead of an anticipated attack from Iran on their proxies in Syria, Yemen, or Iraq. Israeli intelligence has suggested that the strike could come ahead of or within days of the U.S. presidential election. And in your health alert tonight, walking pneumonia cases spiking across the country. We know that happened in the late summer, but this fall, infections are remaining very high. The CDC recently put out a new warning to raise awareness. San Antonio in particular has seen a 20% rise in cases when compared to the same time last year. The National Desk's Ethan Trejo has more.
That spike in cases is serious. According to the Cook's Children's Hospital based out of Fort Worth, last year at the end of October, the percentage of people who experienced cases of pneumonia were 0%. This year, those numbers have jumped up to over 20%.
You get what's called a walking pneumonia.
Associate Professor of Pediatric and Infectious Diseases at UT Health San Antonio, Dr. Tess Barton says walking or mycoplasma pneumonia is typically a more manageable sickness, but it's not as easy to get rid of.
It takes a little bit longer. It kind of, festers and keeps going, and you're not quite as ill as you might be with a traditional bacterial pneumonia.
It will look a lot similar, though, with ongoing cough, nausea, and maybe even a fever. But just like a cold, some cases can turn serious. Also worth noting, Barton says the infection is easily transmissible, so it's usually seen in children or younger age groups who typically spend time in social settings. But bottom line, anyone can catch it.
Every few years, we'll have a wave of many cases of mycoplasma, and then it subsides, and then it comes back a few years later. So we're clearly at the beginning of one of those waves.
With the election, Dr. Barton warns those who will be in close proximity to other voters to take precautions.
We're all touching the same little pens and the same little stylus to make our votes, or the same touch screen. If you expect that you're going to be in a line with a lot of people, some of those people are going to be sick.
Ethan Trejo, Fox.
And tonight, we are very close to getting some of the first election results. Just ahead, how quickly we can expect to have winners and how the race will be called.
Being in line, it was exciting, waiting, and a little nerve-wracking to see how much our future is going to change in such a short amount of time.
A first-time voter there out of South Carolina, a demographic that could be key in today's election. As the earliest election results start being reported within the next hour, some of these races will have a winner declared very quickly. Others may take all night, if not longer, to be officially called. The National News Desk's Dee Gatton has more on how the Associated Press makes their decision on each and every election.
It's the biggest question you'll be asking on election night. Who won? You'll see races being called across different news outlets, social media, and here on the National News Desk. But we're going to walk you through why we use the Associated Press for official results. AP race calls are based on provable facts and data from state and local election offices across the U.S. The calls are never made based on campaign lobbying, news outlet announcements, or even victory speeches. As ballots are tabulated, votes are monitored at the county level. Simultaneously, the AP is determining how many ballots remain uncounted and from where. In most cases, races can be called before 100% of the vote is in. It's important to note that AP calls are not predictions or based on speculation. Vote result analysis and other election data helps declare one candidate as winner, meaning no others can overtake the winner once all votes are counted. The AP may delay declaring a winner or decide not to call if results go against the expected outcome. It's a competitive race or the margins are too close. This is when you may hear phrases like too close to call or too early to call. For real-time results as races are called, stick with us on air or head to thenationaldesk.com to view our interactive election results center.
All right, Dee Dee, thank you. And the iconic ruby slippers worn in The Wizard of Oz, you know what I'm talking about. They're going to soon go to a new owner nearly 2 decades after being stolen. Who's vying for the famous footwear when we come back? Nearly 2 decades after a thief stole the iconic ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, they are on the auction block. In 2005, a 76-year-old man stole these no place like home shoes, which were on loan at the time to the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, which is Garland's hometown. The FBI recovered them in 2018, and now the museum is among those vying at the chance to have them returned with the rights to keep those slippers forever. The museum and Minnesota lawmakers are working to amass the funds needed to bid on the famous footwear, but it's of course not a done deal. The slippers will go to the highest bidder, and the online bidding has begun. And do note, beginning tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, going through the night, we've got special election night coverage for you, so keep it here with us as we bring you the very latest. Thanks so much for joining. See you very soon.